I have been hearing so much good stuff about Will Anderson that frankly, like for a while, I was starting to believe that it might not be true. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I was saying all this same type of stuff about D'Amico Ryans to people who might have not have believed that it was true about D'Amico Ryans, but it totally is. So with Will Anderson, I'm really starting to get it as I start to see more and more interviews with him and hear people talk about him. He's just the real deal. And he was on The Shop right before the draft. I don't know when this was published, but the interview was right before the draft. And you kind of get a feel for a guy that accepts criticism really well, like does things for the right reasons, and just flat out cares a whole lot about football. And it started back in high school, really, when he talks about the way his high school coaches treated him.
Like my high school coach, they did a really good job. So like in high school, like I was one of those type of kids where like at practice, like I didn't mess up a lot. But what they did, like they took it upon themselves. Like if I messed up on one thing,
They
like they
on you.
blew it out of
They
proportion, like
on you.
Well, they
embarrassed me.
Yeah, so and that's not like he was not saying that in a negative way. I know he kind of cut it off there, but he was saying that in a positive way, much like Tom Brady when he was with the Patriots would get called out by Bill Belichick, partly just so Bill Belichick could point to that and say, "Look, oh, you don't, to some other guy, like, oh, you don't want to be criticized, like you're better than Tom Brady." When the best guy on the team is capable of taking that criticism, then it makes it a lot easier. It sets a great example for not just the fact that the coach is going to do it. And I think sometimes this is left out, and this is maybe the most crucial part of it. Really, what it is that's such a valuable form of leadership in that the the other players look at it and see how does that guy respond to the criticism. Does he get sensitive? Does he respond positively to it and get better, or does he sulk about it afterwards or say nasty stuff about the coach? And that's like the real value in it, is that which is also good advice to a coach. If you're going to pull that tactic, be sure that you're doing it to the right kind of guy. Because if that guy turns around and just starts bad mouthing you to everybody else, you want a guy that actually like knows how to take the criticism and learn from it, and as opposed to getting sensitive by it. So I like that a lot about him. And then the Alabama part of it, where it seems like obviously both Nick Casario and D'Amico Ryans feel like guys from Alabama maybe come with a little bit more credibility because they've been through some tough coaching. Here's Will Anderson talking about what it's like playing at Alabama.
When people say Alabama's not for everybody, it's really not for everybody. So the guys that just go there for the rings, those are usually the guys that don't make it. But the ones that can tough it out and have that mental maturity to go in there and handle their business, those are the ones that do
and
good.
well,
Yeah, and I think that part, like when he said the guys that go for the rings don't make it. There's two things about that. One is that like the thing that keeps coming up with Will Anderson is just that he is all about like practicing every day, focusing it on the team, winning, but like winning next week's game, all that stuff, and not as much about the glory of it. Like I think a lot of scouts and coaches look at that and they want to know, all right, is this a guy that is only in it for the money? Is this a guy that's only in it to elevate his name or whatever it might be? Because what happens is when you draft a guy and if he's only in it for the money, like there it is. You got it day one. You sign a contract, it's guaranteed, and you don't have anything to play for anymore necessarily after that. Like with Will Anderson, there's a consistent theme of somebody that is playing like through adversity. When the team had struggles this year, he and Bryce Young, as Nick Casario told us, were the guys that kind of kept everything together. He played in the bowl game when a lot of guys in his position these days aren't playing in the bowl game. That's just like one of the many things that people really like about Will Anderson. This thing that he's about to say here really surprised me. And they asked him about his goals or his dreams about making it in the NFL.
Honestly, if I could sit here and tell you, I wouldn't lie to you, like, could I see any of this coming? Absolutely not. And I made goals, but none of these goals said NFL to this year. Like, none of these goals. Like, for me, I just wanted to go in Alabama and work my butt off every day. Like, that's it, and compete. And I guess with just doing all that and just believing in God and having faith with God, He put some favor over me. And I'm sitting here, so I can just say I'm very blessed.
Yeah, so the other thing about that too is, when we talk about how hard it is at Alabama, and like Nick Saban makes it really, really hard, it's that, hey, like, you don't have to stick around anymore. You know, if you don't like Nick Saban, or if you don't like how hard you have to work, or you just think it's too brutal there, or maybe Alabama's not as good as I thought they were going to be, you can just jet. You know, they've got the transfer portal. You can just go. So I think that's going to be another thing. If you're worried about, like whether your favorite player or quarterback is going to jet after a couple hard seasons or anything, I think that the transfer portal is probably bad in some ways. It's good for athletes, but maybe bad for college football. I think it's might be a real asset to NFL personnel departments because they'll look that as a check in your favor. They'll look at that as a check in your favor when guys aren't so quick to jet or get out or try to seek a better circumstance. Not that it's bad when they do or that it's always bad, but like a stick to itiveness that you want to stick around, you're really in it, and you're attached to that team. I think that means something, especially I guess I'm old now, so it means something to me, and I think it still means a lot to a lot of these old heads um, that are running things. So the last thing here. Oh, and as far as him just not envisioning making the NFL, I just thought that that was really cool when you think about some of these clips we've seen of like how like he's like a innocent young child when he's walking into an NFL locker room for the first time, like kind of awestruck. And then he goes talks about how excited he is just to be a working man in America, that he's got a real job. Because earning NIL money is one thing, but it never feels like real. It doesn't feel like a real job. Like any endorsements or anything else I've ever gotten, that doesn't feel like work. It almost feels a little bit like you're kind of getting away with something, because it's not work. So, like, actually getting a paycheck and everything, that's really cool. Like, that's a and I like that he is excited about that. He's excited about being a working man in America. There's a lot to love about him. So, last thing. Now this I loved. This was one of the coolest things I've seen a first round draft pick say, because I always worry sometimes when I watch guys get drafted that, yes, by all means, enjoy the moment and be happy, and your family should be proud of you, but don't act like that's the final culmination of things. Like, you've got a long ways to go still. So this from Will Anderson right here was really cool.
How I think about it, I haven't made it. I got here. I haven't made it until I'm done. That's how my mindset is. I'm working every day, like no matter like the person behind me taking my position. Like that's how I was at Alabama. Through all the accolades, through all the awards, everything. Like I just got here. I never played an NFL snap. I never been in an NFL building, so I haven't made it anywhere. I'm just arrived at my destination I'm gonna be at. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I'm approaching that.
Yeah, so like the appropriate level of humility there, obviously. The other thing too, I'd say about the CJ Stroud video we'd watched, where those of you just joining us, he talks about the chip on his shoulder and how he felt put off by Quinn Ewers showing up a couple weeks before the season in 2021 and thought that was disrespectful by Ohio State. We clarified the story where it was more that was Quinn Ewers showing up. It wasn't Ohio State wanting him there. But I think that like it's important to remember when we're watching that CJ Stroud stuff that he was specifically being asked questions about having a chip on his shoulder or what motivated him or drove him. There have been a lot of other times where he very much talks about staying humble, being humble, caring about his teammates, all that stuff. Sometimes the context of the interview matters. But as far as where Will Anderson is right there, like I don't think there's any part of Will Anderson that thinks he's going to walk in and all of the veterans on the team are gonna kneel at his feet so he can deliver wisdom unto them. He gets it. He knows that he's gonna have to work at it, and I think that I can understand the excitement over him as a coach or a personnel person, in that he's got the physical tools. I do feel better about how D'Amico is going to use him based on what D'Amico and Will Anderson have said. That I think some of my concerns about him and how his game would transfer to college or to the NFL, I think were overblown or are overblown, because he's going to be used in a different way, in a much more focused way than he was at Alabama. He was, and not that it was bad the way he was used at Alabama. It's just in the NFL, at least early on, they're going to very much focus on developing him into a pure pass rusher. So I'm excited about that part of it. Um, but that also he's like it's really hard to envision him not doing everything he needs to do to succeed. He's going to accept coaching. He's going to be a good teammate. He's going to be motivated. He's going to do all those things. So I'm cool. Everyone is all hot on Jadeveon Clowney, and poof, never really was what he was hyped up to be. Clowney has barely become a good player today. You're a little too extreme on the second part of that, um, because he's been a very solid football player. The thing that's weird about Clowney is that he lacks flexibility and the ability to close the deal on a lot of his sacks. So he ends up with a boatload of pressures. He ends up with tackles for loss. He's like lethal in the run game, but yeah, he's not the ultimate and pure pass rusher. So, but I also think there was a healthy amount of skepticism about Clowney. There was, questions about his senior year and the production there. So, I don't. You could paint it either way you want. He wasn't a complete and total bust. Was he worth the number one overall pick? Very few people ever are, because you basically have to be JJ Watt to prove that you were worth a number one overall pick. So it's Mario Williams, I would say likewise. Mario Williams ends up being one of the career sack leaders uh, in NFL history. And I don't know where he is on the list. I mean, it's not super high up there, but also, wasn't Hall of Fame caliber. I feel like unless you're Hall of Fame caliber, people don't feel like you're going to be worth number one overall. I see a lot of people are having a having a way having a whole lot of discussion about Davis Mills versus Case Keenum versus CJ Stroud. I'm going to stay the hell out of that. But because of that conversation, I'm going to have a hard time picking out relevant quotes from these. Let's do one more. I saw a Football Life episode on Franco Harris. Texans look an awful lot like some of the dynasties when they weren't playoff teams yet. It's exciting. I'll tell you what, Rotten Oxford. Maybe I'm overhyping. Maybe I overhyped Jadeveon Clowney back in the day, but I feel like I'm going to accept your overhyping of the Texans as being potentially on par with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Except unlike the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s, the Texans won't be allowed to take massive, massive amounts of Diana ball. Good day, everybody.